Hey everyone, I just finished reading Power Rangers Unlimited Heir to Darkness again. I've read it a few times. It's a really, really good comic. It's one of the best that Boom's done so far, and I wanted to go over some interesting little thoughts I had about it and my perspective on it. Now, firstly, I don't really follow the main Boom Power Ranger comics, Mighty Morphin, Go-Go, or the new Mighty Morphins and Power Rangers. For whatever reason, it just doesn't really appeal to me, the stories that they have. But whenever they go outside of Mighty Morphin, I will pick it up, or if it's like a one shot or a graphic novel thing, I will get it. So yeah, this I guess does tie in with the main comics, but it can be enjoyed separately. You don't specifically need knowledge of the comics. It probably does help clear up a few things that I have issues with in this, but I don't have any like negative feelings about this. I really like this. There's a few things though I wish that they could have done, but I don't know, maybe they couldn't, or they're saving it for something down the road in the main series comic or something. But anyway, let me go over this. Now it starts off with adult Astronomer, or possibly teenage Astronomer. I don't know. Before we meet her in the beginning of Power Rangers in Space, she's on some other planet. I don't know the name of the planet, and she's just finished killing Flashman, the Prism Rangers. And some fans really don't like this in the comic. Like, they really hate that they're introducing Sentai teams just to kill them off. And I kind of get that, but on the other hand, if it wasn't for their introduction in Super Mega Force, I don't think we would have had anything at all with them. Like if Super Mega Force had stuck to just the Power Ranger characters and not brought in Sentai at all, I highly doubt any Sentai references would be in any of the comics or anywhere. So, I don't know, kind of a two-way thing for me. Like, on the other hand, I'd really love to see what kind of stories could we tell with those Sentai teams, but on the other hand, I don't see them adapting the show itself, or even really taking many elements from the show. Now, there was the Green Psycho Ranger story, where he was originally the Green Ranger of the Supersonic Rangers, 5-man, and they even had, like, the weapons, the ship from the show, and a whole bunch of stuff, and it was pretty cool, but, yeah, unfortunately, they were just there to get killed off, basically. So I don't know, maybe in the future we'll delve deeper into those Rangers and who they were. Or maybe the show itself will do something and the comics will be non canon and they can do something more with them. Anyway, back to the story. Let's see. She goes back to her ship, which is not the Dark Fortress, which I think follows continuity of the show. I just watched In Space a while ago, and I don't think she gets the Dark Fortress until after Dark Spectre sends her to Earth. So I might be wrong on that. I don't remember for sure, but it's just interesting to note that such an iconic ship like the Dark Fortress is not used in this comic, which is very Astronema centric. And I just thought that was interesting because if it's not following the show and it's to tie into the comic, then what's stopping them from using the Dark Fortress? Anyway, then we have a flashback to her as a little kid being trained by a slightly younger Ecliptor for Dark Spectre, and the whole thing reminds me of the Horde training from the new Netflix She-Ra series, where we see Adora and Catra younger being trained by this blue spiky guy, as opposed to a green and black spiky guy. And it's also interesting because Divatox has this little headdress that sure looks a lot like Catra's. Even her hair is all messed up and it looks like Catra. Anyway, the whole thing is very similar to She-Ra, and I wonder if that was any influence. And it's also interesting to note that Adora, in both versions of She-Ra, the original cartoon and the new one, both were kidnapped at very young ages, I think as babies, whereas Corone was a little bit older when she was kidnapped by Darkonda and handed over to Ecliptor, but yeah, it's a similar story, and Astronema and Adora She-Ra are very similar characters. It's interesting. Just a weird little thing to note. And then we get introduced to some other kids that Ecliptor is training, which I thought that was a really cool thing. Now, I wasn't expecting there to be like other kids that had been kidnapped or possibly the children of other villains in the Power Ranger universe that Ecliptor was in charge of training. Let's see, there's Corone, whose name, let's see, they don't call her Corone, they call her K and then a number, because one of the ways of the bad guys getting control of these kids is to break them and make them forget their past. So she's just called K. Like Dr. K. I wish I could remember my name. Huh. Wonder if that'll... it's probably just a coincidence. Then anyway, there's other kids. Divatox is just called D. And then there's two boys, X and Mal. And X and Mal, let's see, they don't really play that big of a part in this. They're just kind of there to be filler, I guess. But there was an interview I read about where Mal apparently is going to be turned into Malagor by Darkonda. Okay. And they're just both, like, normal human-looking people. Let's see, I'm trying to remember. Mal has, like, short hair, big ears, yellow eyes. X has blonde hair, one strand of hair, like, hangs down. He dresses in red. Okay. Is X gonna turn into some villain? Let's see, if Mal becomes Malagor, like, how would that work? Because I've seen the Turbo movie. Malagor's... Like, Divatox doesn't know who or what Malagor even is. Or are they going to adapt that into the comics and change it to fit this? Like, she knows Malagor is, like, on Earth in hibernation or something. She goes to awaken him and he's a monster now because... I don't know. I guess it could work. But anyway, back to the comic again. I go off on tangents anyway. The other interesting thing, Divatox, I mentioned how she kind of resembles Catra, and with her armor, and she has these little gold claws, she also looks a lot like Hyena from the Gargoyles cartoon. So whenever she was there, I kept hearing her lines in my head as Cree Summer. Anyway, then we cut back to the present. I don't know, Astronomer's present as the storyteller of the story. She's going to the planet Mortagne to meet with Ecliptor. Or she's going to Crucius, the capital of Mortagne, which was apparently important enough to tell us in a little caption box. And I don't really know why we needed to know what the setting of this place was. It doesn't make any difference. Whatever. Maybe it's important to the main comic, but as just a standalone story, that's not important information. We didn't need that. Anyway, the weird thing with Crucius, capital of Mortagne, is that there's these big, frames floating in the air, and they have pictures of, I'm assuming, villains. There's some kind of elf woman who I think I've seen in the main comics, but I don't follow those, so I don't know off the top of my head who she is or what her name is, if she's even a villain. And then there's a picture of Scorpina. So I don't know, are these supposed to be people who are missing, maybe? Because if you're going by the comic continuity, I've read Soul of the Dragon, and according to Soul of the Dragon, Scorpina, at this point, I think is in another dimension, with Lokar or something. She's chilling with Lokar. I don't know. Anyway, moving on. We cut back to Astronomer, K, Corone, whatever, as a little kid being trained in the Horde, Dark Spectre's army, whatever. And, let's see. Yeah, it's just general, like, training, getting to know her character, internal struggles, her with the other, like, kidnapped kids who are being trained, or maybe they're kids who are handed over. Who knows? Oh, and that was an interesting thing I wanted to talk about with Divatox. Where's her family? Because that was an interesting thing. Divatox in Power Rangers, after Rita and her family was introduced, Rito and Master Vile, Divatox actually had a pretty big family. Oh, the Machine Empire had a big family too, but Divatox, there was a mother and a father. She had a brother and a nephew. The mother, Mama D, she had a father, Pops, who was thrown into some kind of magic abyss or something. I remember the episode, what was it? Passing the Torch, I think, where, let's see, Mama D, her mother, opens up this portal to drop Tommy into, and Divatox says, "I think I can hear Pop's voice in there." And Mama D goes, "He asked for it." And then there's her brother, General Havoc, and she has Elgar, her nephew, who's... Oh, and he calls General Havoc uncle. So, who's Elgar's parents? Or are they all, like, just kidnapped from random places and they were, like, put together as an artificial family unit? What's the story there? I don't know, maybe I'm thinking too deep into it. But anyway, it was just a weird little thing I wondered about. Like, did Mama D and Pops, like, send her to be trained by Clipter, or was she kidnapped? Which leads me into another interesting thing. There was a storyline that got dropped in Turbo that was going to be about Divatox being Demetria's sister. And Demetria was from a planet in Quiris where they speak in question, although she stopped doing that after a while in Turbo. But in the comic, I noticed a thing. Divatox could have very easily given most of her lines in the form of questions. And it would have been so subtle, I don't think people would have noticed. But they didn't, and I was kind of like, oh, that would have been a neat little thing if they had done that. Like, and the super fans like me would have just freaking gushed over how awesome that would have been. And also, it leads me into a thing I'll talk about at the end. Now, getting back to, let's see, Astronomer K as a young child being trained. Let's see. Her and the other kids are sent into this battle arena to fight each other, to train, and be judged by Darkonda and Dark Spectre. And it reminds me a lot of the arena from King for a Day in Zeo that Prince Gasket brings the brainwashed Tommy to and tells him that he's the ruler of the monsters or whatever. And I'm wondering, is it supposed to be the same battle arena? Because there's a bunch of, like, random monsters in the stands watching. Just like in King for a Day. Anyway, we see a flashback of when Darkonda brought the, like, just kidnapped Corone to Ecliptor to be trained and brainwashed into being Astronomer. And that was a really cool little thing to see, because they do mention that in the show that Darkonda kidnapped her, that she was given to Ecliptor to raise. Anyway, Astronomer, she loses in the battle arena to Divatox, and Divatox is berating her, and Darkonda's giving Ecliptor crap, saying that, if she doesn't shape up, she's gonna go to the furnace. Yeah, that's dark. So they just toss them into a furnace if they're not good enough. You couldn't just make them putties. Anyway, so this gives Ecliptor the idea to get the locket that she was wearing when she was first kidnapped and give it back to her. He had held it back because there was a picture of her brother, Andros, in there, and he was trying to keep that from her to break, like, her connection to her past. If he breaks the connection to her past, then it's easier to, like, teach her to be evil. She won't remember the good people in her lives. She won't think about them. But he gives that to her, and that helps inspire her to go back in. She beats Divatox, and then, oddly, the bad guys say that they had to wipe Divatox's mind. Why? Like, Astronomer kept losing, so why wasn't her mind wiped? I mean, I guess it was, like, in space, so... At some point, everyone's gonna get their mind wiped, who knows? But the weird... Anyway, this goes back to the thing I was talking about before, and Divatox maybe being from Inquiris, and being Demetria's sister. The thing I thought would have been cool is, what if she talked in questions up until this point when her mind was wiped, and then she stops? That would have been a really cool little thing, I think, but unfortunately they didn't do it, and I don't know if it's because they didn't think of it. They already have her established in the main comics, maybe, or maybe because the storyline was dropped in the show. Who knows? I thought it would have been a nice little subtle thing, but they didn't do it, and it's still fine the way it is. I just thought that would have been a cool little geek thing for me. So anyway, yeah, and then Astronomer K goes into this, like, weird darkness cave thing. It reminds me of in Empire Strikes Back when Luke goes into that weird bunch of trees and sees a vision of Darth Vader there. She goes in and this voice tells her what her villain name is, and that's how she gets the name Astronomer. It wasn't just given to her by Dark Spectre, unless that's Dark Spectre's voice. I don't know, it's not really clear what exactly that is. Maybe it's something from the comic. Maybe it's just something that they made up for this. It's a cool little concept that these kids who were kidnapped and had their lives taken away are now like given a new name and reborn in a sense as evil villains, and I thought that was kind of a cool dark thing. So yeah, that's how it ends with Astronomer getting her name. And it's really cool. I really enjoyed this. This is a really, really cool, fun comic. It's really great. I definitely recommend it to any Power Ranger fans. If you're a fan of the comics, or if you're a fan of the show who's getting tired of the constant Mighty Morphin comics, this is for you. This is for me, because that's how I felt. I'm sick of Mighty Morphin stuff, and I'm really hoping that stuff like this and Sins of the Future do really well, so eventually they'll move out of Mighty Morphin and start branching out into the vast universe that Power Rangers has to offer. And hopefully, maybe we'll even get new fans coming into the comics, getting back into the franchise. Fans who maybe they were born after Mighty Morphin, maybe they didn't see Mighty Morphin, maybe they saw seasons like In Space, or maybe they saw Time Force or SPD, Mystic Force, or Mega Force first, and those are their seasons, those are the ones they like, and that they want to see stories of. And hopefully, if we show that stuff that's not just across the board Mighty Morphin will sell well, they'll keep making it. So, yeah. 5 out of 5 stars. A+++. Great comic. Even if I didn't know Power Rangers, I think this really would kind of interest me because of the interesting character dynamics, the designs, and just the surrealness of some of it. So, yeah.